Okay.
Thanks, Doug.
Being recorded. What's everybody think about that to prepare rather than to plan for?
You would say create a stormwater master plan to prepare for future events and identify practices to improve stormwater management.
That looks fine to me, and I looked at the rest of it, and I think it's in agreement with what we talked about. So.
I agree. I'll make a motion. We accept the action items as submitted with that one revision.
Okay. Everybody agree?
Yep. Agree.
They had on the transportation the goal, the last sentence says transportation infrastructure should incorporate changing technologies such as electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. And under the measurables, I wondered if we should add something like, is one of the measurables, the number of charging stations in the town that would be in keeping with the goal. Not recommending that the town do that, but
Track them.
track the count of them in the town is an indication of whatever.
Yeah. So,
Well, sure.
so in that we're promoting it at various businesses and stuff like that, we would track overall in the town. Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
There's the potential of 2 charging stations at the new park.
Oh, for the inclusive playground.
Right.
Can we get grant money for that now?
I don't know, yeah. I'm not sure if it's even done. I'm just telling you that's on the plan.
Well, right now, there's lots of grant money out there for that kind of stuff, so, you know, that's.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that part of the design of the playground? I mean, does it come under like the playground equipment? And
It's a question. I don't know how to answer that.
I mean, they're raising like $1 million for all that. So
Maybe.
maybe they're including it.
We added that just to the site plan.
So,
I think we were requested to add the charging stations to the site plan, so we did.
so there, we'll see.
Speaking of the park, I went by there the other day, the place was popping, you know, it was
Oh,
all types of
Yeah.
activity. Looked good.
Mhm.
Okay. No other changes? I'll communicate this to, well, Sarah's on there, so someplace, I think.
Yep, she is.
So I'll make sure that we send something to Sarah regarding these 2 items. Okay. If nothing else, we'll move on to transportation or transfer station planning, and third item is transfer station hang tag. So as far as planning goes, we had finally received a document from the county. I think that was shared with.
Regina's on with us today.
Regina is on.
Oh,
Hi,
okay.
Regina.
Good. Good. Well, perhaps you'd like to, if you'd like to take over, Caitlin, and
Sure. So I sent Regina. I shared with the committee the full transfer station consolidation study that you guys put on the website. I don't know how much anybody had a chance to review it. I unfortunately didn't get to read through the whole thing. I was speed reading as everybody was walking in this morning. But we had previously reviewed the executive summary at our last meeting, and then kind of this was the full study that maybe answered some of our questions. I know we had on our to-do list for transfer station planning to do our site visits. Unfortunately, we just haven't had a chance to schedule those. Hopefully we'll be able to do those in the near future. June. Sometime in June.
2021.
Sometime in the near future, we'll hopefully get to do that. That was kind of the next step. I don't know, did anybody have any questions about the study? Did you guys have a chance
It
to
was
look through it?
certainly all inclusive compared to the executive summary we got last time.
Yeah.
I would just ask that you make sure that the metrics in there, all the numbers pertaining to the town are accurate and correct, and make sure we're, dealing with the right numbers.
Mhm.
Virginia, I didn't see the final plan, but when I looked at the executive summary, I didn't see the city of Canandaigua addressed in the distribution, long-range distribution planning. Is that in the full concept? Because we're kind of wrapped up with the city on some stuff.
Right. So I think, you may not be mentioned directly in the plan, given the fact that you don't have a facility, an actual facility. We do know, obviously, you were, closely linked with the town to some degree. So, we always assume that anything that impacts the town would ultimately impact the city. We were really looking at the municipalities that had physical facilities. So the city wasn't really our priority at that point.
Okay, yeah, I'm with the town. I just know we're wrapped up with the city, so I didn't know how you addressed them, so. Okay.
Right, and the plan, is really focused at a county-wide level. We're looking to use the existing facilities a little more, I guess, comprehensively for all county residents. That was the ideal going into the study, and kind of what the study reflects. We've through side conversations we've had throughout the study and post-study, we obviously know that that's may not be possible or ideal, given how our county kind of functions now with our facilities. But the county would like to work with any facility that is willing to hear our ideas and able to implement anything at their station. So
In the study itself, it talks about the collection of household hazardous waste potentially being located here, but then I've heard also that that's off the table now, or?
right. So going into the study, we had asked the consultant to consider the idea of a centralized location where we could collect a lot of those specialty items that we do kind of our events throughout the year for. So residents had a place to take them year round. They ultimately, came back with kind of a hub and spoke model where you guys were the hub because you're a little more centrally located in our county versus a lot of the other facilities. We do, and obviously that would include household hazardous waste. We see a little bit of challenge, not having that hub or that main location not being on, county owned property. So we probably would move away from the recommendation of you as the hub. I know you're also space constrained to some degree already. Our initial thought was always to use the landfill facility since the county already owns that and it's already permitted to most of the degree that we would need it. And even though it's not centrally located, we could work with that site a little easier. So I would say, logistically accepting HHW at your facility would be a little more complicated than I think the town really will want to, get involved with and that we would recommend, honestly.
No. Speaking for myself, I would agree with that. So. Another question I had is that throughout the, we get into the recommendations and the combinations and permutations, there's a lot of combining of different municipalities, to create a more centralized, some facilities don't take brush, material like that. Others don't take tires. I mean, there's different combinations in there. How is that being received by the various municipalities in the county? Can you comment on that?
I'd say we have a pretty mixed reception of it. Some of the towns aren't as involved or invested in the facilities like you guys are. And they kind of view it a little bit more of a burden to even offer the simplest of services to the residents right now. So I think some of those people would be willing to want to look to other alternatives in terms of either closing their facility if they knew that their residents could be served elsewhere, or beefing up their facilities to make it, I guess, more comprehensive for their residents to use. So, but then there are also facilities like yourselves and, you know, Victor and Gorham who have a pretty extensive program already. And I suppose we get a little bit of concern from those facilities just for like changing the status quo and, you know, kind of rocking the boat when things are going, you know, fairly smoothly right now. And, you know, also the study kind of talks about, you know, if we did close some of the other facilities, all residents of the county would be able to go to the ones that are open. So that, you know, puts a little bit of concern in terms of can facilities accept that many people on a typical given day when the transfer station is open. So I say we have a bit of a mixed review right now. So, you know, I know we've been saying we've been trying to get a meeting scheduled to talk to all of the transfer station operators, and hopefully we will do that in the near future, just to kind of really flesh out everybody's concerns and ideas towards, you know, what the study did recommend, and, you know, see who's interested in what or not interested at all. So.
Well, there has been talk, I think we talked with you back in December, before even that executive summary came out, and you had indicated that there would be a meeting, hopefully late January, early February,
Right.
May. I'm not criticizing you at all.
Right.
And I know that government moves at the speed of glaciers,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah.
um,
So we're still crawling.
Timing going forward, and a meeting such as that and then beyond.
Yeah, so it's still, you know, we're still hoping to have that meeting. I think kind of the scope of that meeting is kind of evolving right now. Given some of the responses we've received from the study, just kind of offhand from supervisors and others. So we're trying to figure out the best way to approach how to move forward with the study and the recommendations. So I'm hoping maybe June will be the month that we do it. But again, you know, everything moves at its own pace. So I can't promise you anything at this point.
Is there any serious ongoing effort to try to reduce the amount of debris coming into the county from other locations? To the landfill?
So I guess no is the short answer. Like we don't reach out to the other places that, you know, provide our landfill with waste as to what their waste diversion programs are. The state is obviously, they have their own team and they work with a lot of the other municipalities and counties to really, you know, push forward the waste diversion efforts. And, you know, as you know, Casella is a private company and they are the operators of the facility. So, you know, they take in the waste that, you know, as a private company, they deem necessary, and under contract with us, they are able to take. So I guess my answer is no.
So really, that's all under state and private control?
Well,
Or
I wouldn't say control. It's just more, you know, we don't feel it's our place to go to other counties or municipalities and really like harp on them about their waste diversion efforts. You know, I think that's at the state level, that's more of their job to do. Everybody knows their responsibilities, and hopefully the state is getting on them about theirs. You know, Ontario County, we're trying to be, you know, forward moving with ours for sure, but
I'm a little confused by all that because it seems like we have certainly a large stake in keeping people from, I mean, Casella operates the facility, but you know, ultimately we're concerned with it getting filled up. You know, it seems like we would have some kind of control over that.
I think that segues well into something we've talked about a lot with the planning process is, you know, come 2028, if the landfill is closed, you know, where's our waste going? Is it how far are we gonna take it? Are we gonna need to plan, to kind of pivot our collection and transportation in, a couple of years?
Right, for sure. And, that obviously that's a huge discussion will have to happen in the next few years. 2028 is only getting closer. There hasn't been much discussion on which way or the other the board will lean in terms of closure or semi-closure or what have you. But, we do want to keep residents mind that, once our landfill does inevitably close one day, our waste will go somewhere else. And we don't want to be hypocritical in that, we expect other people bringing waste to us are doing their best to reduce it. So therefore, we want to reduce as much as we can, not just for the impact on ourselves, but also where our waste is going. Now, we are surrounded by many other large landfills in the area. So, our adjustment won't be, I don't think, that huge, but, there will be a cost for sure, as there is one less landfill in the area.
But that does bring it back to us, Regina, in the sense that if this hub and spoke thing does develop, and we become a hub here, the design of that facility, we would have to take into consideration that future, that if the Ontario County landfill is closed, the hauling from here might necessitate larger vehicles, more traffic. So the basic design of that would have to account for that for the future. So the whole thing, it's like trying to grab a handful of smoke at this point. It's
Right.
hard, like else, it's hard to, we're bringing materials in from all over the state, but there's a contract with Casella that allows them to bring that material in. We can't, well, I suppose you could break a contract or something like that, but God knows what would happen with that. So it's just this ponderous thing that you can't decide which shape that we would like to see moving forward. And it's frustrating, to
Right. No, and I'll say, it's frustrating on our end. We don't know which way the county's going to go. We really have no clear image of, what's going to happen with our landfill. So, we try to prepare for everything, but, obviously that's not going to happen. But, every little bit that we do, will help in the end. And, in terms of your facility, there should be forethought into, what will happen if our landfill will close. There's a potential the landfill could stay open for, like locally generated waste only, or it could be completely closed off to us. So it's really hard to say at this point.
Well, that's my big concern. We all have been, everybody's been raising the big red flag about that landfill, but we don't seem to be doing anything positively about it to try to curtail the problem. I just don't understand it myself.
Right. So, our objective in our department really is to educate residents that, there is 2028 is coming. There will be changes then, and we need to make, the small changes within our households now. And, waste diversion at home is really what we aim for as a department right now. So, and I know that's, I guess, small in the grand scheme of everything that we're talking about, but that's where it all comes from. So
I could just jump in for a second. I share that frustration. My understanding is that all these studies we've been doing are so that we have guidance as a board. So when you're saying there should be forethought, we're looking to all the consulting firms and all of the information we're trying to get from solid waste and sustainability. So we're waiting for the information, I guess. And so we've been in a holding pattern since I took office, waiting for something has to be, keep saying it has to come, and it's going to come. But
right.
how do we get that forethought if we're not using what you're giving us?
Right. Well, we're doing the studies, we're trying to work with the facilities, but, I don't sit on the board. I won't ultimately make that decision of what happens with the landfill. There will obviously be, I suppose, some residential input just through constituents, through the supervisors, but ultimately it's their decision.
I
And
am
our
on,
department,
I am on the board of supervisors, and
right,
I'm looking for that information for that. She said there has to be forethought. So where are we going to get that? We're ready to move to make decisions. We're looking to the consultants and these reports to make those decisions. So if that's not what this is, then I agree, we have to get moving.
right.
That was
And
my understanding.
I think, there needs to be additional, I don't think we have everything we need, or I guess the board may argue that they don't have everything they need to make that decision at this point. So that needs to be fleshed out in the next few years or year, as we are, closely getting to that date. I really don't have a good answer for you, but it's always changing. Things are always changing, always moving. And, right now the study was just focused on the transfer stations, which honestly only accept about 10% of the waste within the county. I mean, the majority of the waste flowing from our county into the landfill is, through private haulers. And that's just, a whole nother beast that we're trying to tackle in addition to this. But, we know the importance of the facilities, and it's, still a way for residents to move waste through the county. So, this study was hopefully going to help us do that more efficiently.
And I guess I have to speak to Carla and Chris Singer, and I know I'm only one on the board, but we're all under that impression that we're getting information to help us make those decisions. So I will look into it some more and report back to this committee, because I share your frustration.
Yes, I would say, Carla's a lot more closely linked with the board in terms of those decisions or non-decisions at this point. And I don't really know where her and Chris Singer stand at this point, but she could probably give you a better explanation than I just did.
If you could just report back to them that that's where we are, as
Mhm.
I know from other board members, we're waiting. We can't do anything with that information. And if you need something else to make that decision, then we have to get moving. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Off the top of your head, you know of the materials that go into that landfill on a daily or weekly basis, what's the percentage generated within Ontario County, whether it's transfer stations or private haulers versus the total? Are we 10% or are we 2% or
No, I believe we're 20%.
20%? So 80% coming from outside the county.
Right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we know that there's no easy answers here. If they're not popular with our residents, they're not popular with our representatives, they're not inexpensive. So it's definitely an ongoing conversation, which segues well into our next agenda topic, which is transfer station hang tags. So we had talked last year about starting to potentially charge a small fee to cover the costs of the new style hang tags that we're using, as kind of dipping our toes in getting our residents used to the idea that they may have to start paying to use the transfer station. So, as we kind of talk about that, maybe we can also talk a little bit about everybody's favorite topic, pay as you throw. I think that these two items are pretty closely linked.
I agree with paying for the hang tags, come up with a reasonable price, and, cost of using the facility. We need to make those site visits before we talk anymore about the pay as you throw, because I think that's a big can of worms, but I think we ought to charge for the hang tag, come up with a reasonable price.
I think also we need to have more guidance from the county in terms of, if the entire county is going to head toward pay as you throw, one thing. But if it's just going to be one here, one there, that's another. And communicating with our residents in the town, you know, that philosophy, well, we need a lot of discussion about that. I think the tags themselves, were they like $1 or so cost us last year?
They were 2 years ago, who knows
2
what
years.
they cost now.
Well,
You
yeah,
know. There was, within the study, I won't be able to pull it up right now, but there was an interesting chart that kind of detailed what other municipalities,
Yeah.
whether you are paying paying to dispose of your waste, or if it's like included with your taxes, or if there's an annual fee. So we do have that information
Yeah.
here.
well, a lot of
Um,
communities, they use the term subsidized. Because their transfer stations from the general fund. I wouldn't call it subsidizing it. We do fund our operations through general fund, but you know, we also fund snow plowing, you know, we fund other activities, road maintenance, so using the term subsidized, I don't like that term in that report, so.
But one of the things is, I think the transfer station is unique in that only a portion of the population uses it. When you look at roads, you know, it's
Yeah.
pretty much general.
Well, we can all use it though. Everybody
Oh, yeah,
can
yeah.
use it.
But I can almost see charging $10, you know, and bill it as, yeah, we gotta buy the tags, but we're also helping to support the service, you know, so I can see, you know, charging $10, not just trying to recover $1 for the tag.
Well, we'll have you stand out there January 1st with those tags that have $10 each.
And that's the other piece to this puzzle
Yeah.
is enforcement. If we start
Wow.
charging for these,
They're using.
you know, how are we going to enforce that? We've had a couple of people have offered to volunteer, but I mean, Jim and I have been out there and it's not pretty.
No.
It's not, it's, you know, it's not easy, it's not well received.
What do you think the tag usage is percentage wise? I guess around 50% of people actually have a tag in the window.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I see a fair amount of tags out there.
Mhm.
And some people are conscious about putting them on, some people just have, you know, like,
Have
oh
it.
yeah, here, you know,
I forgot that.
type thing, you know, because they don't want to hang it up their mirror all the time.
Mhm.
Okay, I think Jean, I don't know, she did like 1,800.
Oh, no, I think more like 25.
Was she,
Yeah.
okay.
But,
She-
you know, some of those residents use the transfer station once or twice a year to get rid of some
Right.
furniture or scrap metal or something. They're not all full-time
I
users.
mean, you know, as far as enforcement, I guess that'd be very difficult with the way we're currently set up, with the width of traffic. You know, even Wednesday at 4:20, when I went out there, they were 6 wide, 8 deep, because they all funnel in at once. I have no, I don't know how you enforce that.
Well, maybe we ought to defer charging until we go to the new system where we talk about having a card reader at the
That-
gate where you gotta, in order to get in, you gotta have your card.
I would much rather have like a, what do we call it, Terry, you know, that little reader, like on your
Oh,
RFID.
RFID.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you do at the airport.
Right,
Gate,
just
you gotta-
open it, scratch.
Well, we talked
So-
about doing that along, you know, if we
Along with
develop a
the-
new facility, yeah.
Well, I think, me personally speaking out loud, like, just read between the lines, like, I think the county's wanting to help, but I don't know if the county's professional really looking to get away from what their normalcy is at their residents. I think we should probably look at just going our direction and plan for the future, whether it's here in 2028 or we're traveling somewhere else.
Yeah, but there's a lot of cost and difference in those two perhaps. And why spend the money if we don't have to? I mean, that's,
What, so if we don't do it, what would we do?
I'm not.
Provide
saying-
misunderstanding the question.
Well, no, I mean, my opinion, and it's just my opinion, we need more guidance from the county. The county's got to step up and say, here's what we think everybody should, in the county should do. And I don't understand why they won't do it. frustrating. There needs to be, they operate the landfill, they own the landfill, I mean, it's us.
Right.
But they're the entity that's responsible for it. They approved the money apparently to do the study. Now they don't like the study, the results that come in, so they won't get behind the thing and say, here's the direction that we're gonna go in.
Right.
And they gotta step up, and do it. And, you know, until they do, I don't think that we should move forward on designing something that they may take us in a totally different direction, and then we spend money that we can't get back. So that's just my opinion. You know, it's the rest of the board.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, and I apologize, I haven't gotten through all 84 pages of this study yet, but my understanding is the study mostly talks about the collection of waste at transfer stations. Does it really go into any thoughts on landfill use post 2028, Regina?
No, it doesn't. That is,
It's not
no,
really,
that is not part of the study.
that's not really part of it.
It's really just looking at how transfer stations are utilized now, you know, kind of our vision of how, I guess, we would ideally like to use them in the county. But again, we're not looking to, at this point, you know, force anyone to make any drastic changes. We are willing to work with any facility that is willing to work with us, to see kind of, you know, our vision of how we would want, you know, a facility to run. You know, pay as you throw is something that we've always thought would work, but it is tough if, you know, only one facility or a few facilities across the county are, you know, under the pay as you throw and the rest aren't. You know, it's kind of, we haven't, I guess, decided if that would be worth it. And like you said, you don't want to waste your money, but we are, you know, we would more than happy, you know, to sit down with you guys. You guys sound like you're ready to move forward with, you know, design plans. And if you're bored and all of you are, you know, I guess, interested in the pay as you throw, I know you've talked about visiting other facilities. If you visited the town of Manchester, you know, that's our ideal. You know, residents pay for exactly what they bring by pound. They weigh it and they use a card to pay for it. And they, because the facility runs like that, you know, any resident technically throughout the county can go and use their facility. You know, the town isn't taking on the extra cost of any other resident, because they're still paying for exactly what they're bringing.
Well, I believe our town is ready to, you know, work with the county, very willing to. But we need more direction. I mean, is it going to be just the town of Canandaigua? Is it going to be the town plus the city? Is it going to be the town, the city, Hopewell, Bloomfield? I mean,
Right. And I guess that's something, you know,
here's how
we
here's
would,
the organizational structure. We're going to move forward with it, but I
right.
don't see that in the document. I mean, there's recommendations, but it seems to me that the county board of supervisors has to say, yeah, we recommend that everybody do this, whatever this is.
Right. And I think, you know, that's where we hit a bit of an issue, is that, you know, if you guys are willing to do that, you can't feasibly accept, you know, any resident across the county like coming into your facility on every Saturday. You know, that's not gonna, your site isn't large enough to do that. And if you're one of the only sites that's doing the pay as you throw, then that becomes an issue. Now, if we can get other facilities on board to also take on some of that burden as well, you know, that's the ideal. And that's, you know, kind of what the study recommends, is that, you know, we have 6 or 7 transfer stations open, they're full capacity, and they accept, you know, all the items that we hope to collect from our residents, you know, more on a weekly, monthly basis. But I guess we aren't at the point of forcing municipalities to do this, because right now, you know, municipalities are running it. Like the county isn't subsidizing these facilities, you guys are. So for us to come in and say you have to do it this way and figure out where the funds come from, even with, you know, help from our funds, is politically a little hard.
So I guess to move along, we ought to keep giving out the tags, but not try to charge this time and see where we go in the
For
future.
another year,
Yeah, okay.
So that's a
Oh, 2 years.
2-year cycle.
2 years.
I'll bring it up to the board at our next board meeting and ask them what they think.
Do
Should we
you-
charge, put it on their fee schedule, do we charge $2 or whatever they cost, or not, or just bag it? But Greg Hoteling here, our engineering consultant from MRD, just mentioned a good point, and that is that if you go to pay as you throw, how many people are gonna say, yeah, I'm just gonna have to sell it, come and pick it up? They're not gonna bother with it, so that could influence, I mean, you don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Thought that last time, could just push everybody private, but you don't know, right? You
No.
don't know how to answer.
So therefore, I mean, and that's something you would have to at least have a involvement.
Right, and like I mentioned, that's, you know, the hauler situation is something that we're working on simultaneously as well. That's a bigger challenge because they are private companies and, you know, we're working on a local law that, you know, will subject them to certain things that we want. If it's pay as you throw, you know, they have to adjust how they, you know, accept waste from residents throughout the county as well. So, I mean, that's an ongoing thing as well, but it's kind of a parallel track to, you know, the transfer station study.
Well,
There are discussions with them, Regina, regarding things like, you know, getting food waste out of the waste stream and get them thinking about that also.
Who, the private haulers?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really control what you put in your garbage. They're a private company. They're going to haul what you put out by the curb. So it's more, you know, the state's coming down with some mandates with food waste. Internally as a county, you know, we're pushing our backyard composting programs to encourage residents to, you know, divert food waste from their regular trash at home. You guys are, you know, generous enough to offer drop off location for food waste, and you know, we've encouraged other transfer stations to offer the same. So that's a little bit more of a groundwork effort, I guess, with residents versus the private haulers in terms of specific waste going in. It's more logistics and how they charge residents for what they're ultimately putting out by the curb.
and some recycling enforcement as well,
Right.
correct?
Right. We do get complaints about haulers not necessarily recycling what goes in the recycle bin that residents are putting out. So we're working on that. And obviously, as you guys mentioned, enforcement is one of the biggest hurdles with haulers. I mean, they're private companies and we do need to figure out how we can effectively enforce them to do, you know, what we ask of them through our local law.
So if we wanted to jump out and do something, what's the availability of grant dollars for this kind of work? Do you know?
Right. So that's something I think, you know, if you guys are serious and you think your board is, you know, amenable to the pay as you throw idea or at least discussing it, I would love to schedule a meeting with the town and Carla to, you know, see where we go from there. I know the county is able to help with funds in terms of upgrading the facility to a pay as you throw acceptance. So that's something we can discuss as well.
And I
But-
believe, Emily might be able to comment too. I believe we may be eligible for some funds through the MWRR state grant. That used to be more of an infrastructure grant. It recently pivoted to more of a education and outreach grant, but I believe there is still a infrastructure component to that grant. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes, I believe that is true.
So there may be some state funding available as well.
Yes.
Well, at the end of the study, the last few pages indicate different funding potential, grant potential, so
Okay.
there is quite a bit of information in there.
So Jim, when we're putting this material over there, is there any way to kind of put that material so we would kind of help whatever we might plan to do over there?
We would have to come up with an elevation that we want to shoot for.
Yeah,
as
because
far
I
as-
see you almost got like a berm. I said, I saw it today. I said, whoa, there's a transfer station platform, you know? So that's why I just brought it to mind, you know? You might think about that. Maybe not, maybe yes.
Well, yeah, we can definitely, it definitely needs to be brought up, because we need to have positive drainage around everything that goes to the stormwater, because right now it's flat. What that elevation is, yeah, it could be where it's at, or could be higher at the site. Don't have a good answer for you.
You also need to have a preliminary site and planning design, you know, so you can at least roughly work to it. But, you know, just something for us to think about.
Oh,
We kind of had that, like, when we first started, Alabama.
Yeah.
15, I think it was, we started that.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I've got
We
those
didn't
rough
have any-
Yeah,
sketches.
we get those rough sketches, we can review those again, just see what it looks like.
Yeah, I just thinking we might try to help us so as we go along.
Pull them off the shelf, dust them off, and see.
Not a good shelf there.
After that,
I
If
think
I could just jump in on that, so the, and I don't know if you're getting any feedback because we're still experimenting
Oh,
over on
good.
this side, but, so to piggyback on what Jim's comment was relative to the transfer station tags and stuff, one of the things to keep in mind, I would hate to see us charge $1 or $2 for a tag, because more often than people, they pay with a credit card and they're gonna hit with a $3 fee for that $2 tag, which I don't think is gonna make anybody happy when they come in to do that. And then keep in mind also, and we've talked about this numerous times, the city of Canandaigua is willing to work with us in just, again, exactly your conversation, waiting for some direction from the county on what's going to happen. And then they're willing to go forward with us and do something in partnership with us. So exactly what you're talking about. Maybe it's got to involve some of the cards that we're talking about and what Jim was saying. You know, that's a point in time when maybe you could do something like that and control access to the facility. But again, anything is possible. And we have willing partners.
Well, I think our next steps are to do our site visits. Hopefully we can have that meeting the county's organizing with the transfer station operators sometime in the near future. And kind of check those 2 boxes and hope that they are able to give us a little bit of a direction to move forward in.
Yep.
And I would confirm and update those numbers to make sure that they're right, because that's the basis of what's generated. If you don't know that number, we're already in terms of design.
They took all these numbers from our
Yeah.
DEC reports.
I did see one number that looked out of whack for another town, but I forget what it was, what chart it was.
Okay,
There could be
I'll take a
just
note.
typing.
I'll double check things, John.
I guess we've beaten this one pretty much to death.
Yeah, good topic, good topic.
It has been a good topic for a long time.
controversial topics.
There's, like I said, there unfortunately are no easy answers. I know what your answer is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump off, but I'll answer any last questions if anybody has any.
I think we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
attending, Regina.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Right on.
Let's move it along. Since we're down in there, we'll go to the sanitary sewer discussion. County Road 28 versus our sewer master plan, and where we are. Last conversation we had, you were gonna talk to the county about what their view might be.
Yeah, and I still have to do that. I have to basically wrap up what we have and send it off to those guys. I'll do that next week.
You got a endorsement from the board, right? Meeting
Yes.
in terms of expanding the plan.
But then county, what do they do that's?
Yeah, we do have to have the county line, and we have to understand exactly what the county's gonna require, so we
Mhm.
really account for definitely all the costs that they may develop going through the process.
Okay.
To continue.
The only concern I heard was somebody asked, would it expand an area for development, and I think you answered that question. at The meeting, which due to the topography it was done.
Yeah, not without adding in another pump station, and I think it's really difficult to go from a pump station, to a pump station.
Well, let's move along to the water project, the consolidated, consolidated project. I see the other tank creeping up to the
Yeah, they got
local
two,
level.
two more rings to do.
Just two?
As of yesterday, they have two more rings to do. And then they'll have it, and then it's gotta sit for a week while the sealant cures, and then we can start filling it, so. And it is possible that we might be filling before the end of May.
And on the agenda, there's an extension for completion of project just due to delay of materials for 30 days. 30 or 45 days a day.
But yeah, it's surprising, by the way.
Yeah,
it's,
just make you aware of it, that it's on the agenda. And that also goes along with Coliseos, they both start at the same time for warranty purposes.
right,
So it wasn't, one isn't starting here, wasn't starting here, just at the same time, substantial completion will move forward.
yeah, the substantial is due, is, my contract is in May, I think we're pushing it to July. So, or early July, so,
How's complete work looking?
some of it looks really good. Our masons are gonna have a lot of additional work trying to clean up the booster station. They're aware of it and they are gonna address that. So
What do you mean clean, what do you mean clean up?
The grout line.
the route line, so they sealed the block. We don't have uniform color in the mortar grout. And then there's also, they were just kind of sloppy with their work. So when they sealed it, they put the sealer on, they sealed up the stuff they need to clean off. So they basically have to strip the sealer off, clean up the block, and then come up with a way to color the mortar and then reseal it. So it's a lot of extra work for work.
Yeah.
You know, there's that, there's gonna be there is some items that have to be addressed as far as appearances go, but
Finished work
finished work,
is not really progressed as far as maybe we would want to right now, but we've been told by the GC they have the finished guys there now. Those people that are gonna be more focused on the finished work.
But the mechanics seem good so far?
yeah, we're doing startup of the chlorine analyzer this Monday and the pumps
Wednesday morning, right?
Yeah, Wednesday morning, pumps work fine. Okay.
The SCADA seems to be working good now.
Is up and
We haven't started the THM removal system yet,
No.
so that's another startup we'll have to get scheduled.
but we won't do that until the other tank is up in service.
Right.
So they're there at one time to start up.
Okay.
So that'll probably, that'll be in the
Contractors amenable to comments you're making about finish?
Yeah, actually, Craig Stevens and Crane Hogan has been actually really good to work with. He's pretty readily to go ahead and say, yeah, we messed up on this. We'll address it. So it's actually been nice because the prior foreman was maybe not
That's
quite as
good.
quick to just accept it. Yeah.
It's like, we'll fix it, so. That's been nice.
Sounds good.
Good. So if we have a dry summer, we'll be prepared for it.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of pumping
Doesn't
capacity.
seem like it's gonna be a dry summer.
All right, now,
Give it 2 weeks, it'll be 80 degrees.
Okay, any other comments on the? Have you guys been up there to see that, the way
Yeah.
they do that in Rankin? It's amazing how they do that. You go up and take a look. Just drive up in there and fascinating.
Some trench tag and, yeah.
Just drop.
Yeah. Well, they were doing a lot of finished work. They're putting the fence up, so
and they got rough grading at the booster station and the fence is going up. Now the finished grading at the tanks, I have to wait until August to all their stuff out.
right.
So, like I said, end of May, first part of June. By the time we get there, that's cleaned up and out.
Right. We'll be a little bit of ways off before we do a ripping cutting.
We'll go to the last topic here, the town of Farmington intermunicipal agreement on water. I've gone through this agreement and looked at the new agreement. We didn't really have the old one. Jeff Graff from Farmington proposed a bunch of changes. And, you know, it seemed like it really ought to be lawyer to lawyer, you know. Well, this morning I got a text from Chris Nadler saying, I'm fine with all changes, we'll just do them. So we can either talk a whole lot about it or just.
Yeah,
talk to lawyers.
I didn't have the old one to compare.
I
but
didn't
It
either.
looked reasonable to me
Yeah.
from what I read. I
I
was
was seeing
seeing
a purpose.
Well, it,
Or there never was.
well,
there was an
No, it
agreement.
there was an agreement in 2015
Yeah.
that involved football also. Well,
Oh, okay.
football,
It's because
we
that's.
separated from football, one 19.
Yeah,
And then
right.
in 19, set up an agreement with Farmington, because we sell them water, but then they supply water back to us, because we're not part of town. But the thing went to Farmington and just got lost up there. So it just surfaced here now, a month or two ago. And so their attorney, Jeff Graff, he didn't like the wording in some of the sections of the new agreement. And trying to get Chris to comment on it, and finally did this morning at 8:06. That I'm fine with everything, we'll just do it. So,
Yeah, I didn't see any problem.
Would that facilitate the line that runs through Janequa's property? Having this agreement?
well, that-
I do understand.
Oh, the line that runs through Janequa's property, would this facilitate?
No.
No, it
No,
has nothing to do with
this
it.
is separate. I mean,
Separate.
it's
I knew it was.
connected, but it's separate, right? So like the IMA needs to be completed as part of the process for the financing for their project through EFC. So this is one of the IMAs that hasn't been signed and countersigned, so we can file it. That allows someone in Albany to check a box and say, yeah, this is done. But yeah, it's not necessarily the mechanism to get the water main across Janequa property, but they are in the process of getting their plans approved so they can put that project out to bid, do the new water tower and transmission main. So that will happen. More than likely, if they start, it'll be later into 2021 at this point.
well, we've come to the end
I
of
got
the
one more.
agenda, but Jim has something
Yeah,
else.
so, as everybody knows, expenses have been going up. And I spoke with Doug briefly yesterday about our current procurement policy has us at $1,000. That they had 2 quotes and things that we've been buying over years, we've never had to worry about being over 1,000. Now everything we buy is over 1,000. Not everything, but a fair amount more work is going into us having to go, oh, that's over 1,000. I get another written quote or verbal quote. I would like to see it be increased to say 2,500 or 3,500 from 1,000, so that we're not making additional work for our employees to have to each time they go purchase something, stop, or when they get it, go, oh, it's over 1,000. You can now go back and get another quote, which I didn't have a requisition for in the first place. So it's just, I'm coming to the Public Works Committee and to speak to you about increasing it to $8 amount. I was thinking 3,500, but that's just my opinion, to see if we can discuss that here. So you bring it back to the town board, discuss it there, increasing it. Doug, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, Jim, there was another piece to that. Just remember, the current procurement policy actually calls for a $3,000 for public works. So I think the simple solution is just to define what public works is, and maybe that's anything related to the D fund or any of the special districts, leaving the A fund separate, because the current procurement policy actually says that you have to go that route for $3,000 on public works projects.
Okay. So,
What has to be done to accomplish that? Is that just an
Just
internal?
an amendment to the policy. Just the town board just needs to amend the policy. Pretty simple.
So it'd be a resolution to that effect? Then?
Yeah.
So you can, between you guys, you'll do that, or?
yeah, we can do that. I'm not I'm not sure how to write that resolution, but to be honest with you, I don't know the language.
Oh, yeah.
I got it. No big deal.
Okay, I just don't know how to say it.
That's what he wanted to hear, Doug.
Seems
As long
like,
as you're good with the $3,000, I'm good. I'll take care of it.
Okay,
yeah, let's do 3.
that's fine. Thank you all. Okay. That's also good for.
There's no state code that defines how much municipality can spend without going out to bid or,
Yeah, there's 35,000.
okay, but nothing related to this kind of discussion
No.
in terms of having to get, okay.
But I agree, it's hard to go out and get anything for $1,000.
So
Well,
Almost,
2x4 will cost pretty soon.
almost daily, we get a
2x4.
surprise that something's over.
and I see Emily's with us. Maybe Emily could fill us in on some of our grants. You're muted. Okay.
First time you couldn't hear Alan.
She didn't hear that.
Wait, what was that?
Nothing. You were speechless for the first time,
I
Emma.
guess I got nothing.
Try that.
Just to give you a little bit of just, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Not usually a problem. So there's, a lot of discussions going on about different grant funding coming down, both at the state and the federal level. And we have reached that point where it is May. May is the magical month for grants. And grant funding that comes out about now would be the consolidated funding application process, which is when the state releases 30 different grants from 11 different state agencies. So that should be coming out at any day. And that includes, particularly when it comes to engineering, engineering planning grants, water quality improvement projects. So that's one set of grants that will come out. Also, what will be coming out is the Downtown Revitalization Initiative grant, which is the $10 million grant that will be coming out any day now. And then also following the CFAs are usually a little bit later is the WIA grants, the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grants. So these are grants that the town is certainly aware of, the town has certainly participated in, but it is kind of coming up again. We have heard of federal funding that is coming down. However, we don't have the guidance on that yet. And until we get that guidance, can we really understand exactly what can be spent, and certainly don't want to get too far, put the cart ahead of the horse on that funding. So the grant season is about to just take off. And Greg and I will usually circle in and kind of get an idea of any new projects that are starting that the town might want to, that might qualify for. The water quality improvement project grant usually has 6 categories. And it's also updated every year. So what we'll be doing is, as soon as that guidance is released, we'll be looking into that to see if there are any potential matches for the town to have strong eligibility, making it worth their while for an application. So that is just about the grant update there. And to compliment Caitlin, we did work with the MWRR last year, or the year before. It might have been the year before. COVID kind of throws you off, but it's the first time we had done that, and we had written that grant together and were successful. And that grant has changed a little bit as far as eligibility, but we can certainly take a look at that when it comes out again, to see, and that I believe was the fall, what we can obtain. Does that sound right, Caitlin?
Yeah, it comes out October 1st, and it has a quick turnaround of it's due October 31st or 30th, the end of the month.
Yeah, it was definitely fast. We'll be in a much better position now that we've done it once. But that we can certainly look at that to see what that eligibility entails, whether that, in addition to education, which Caitlin was able to really work on and take advantage of, also the infrastructure piece.
How are we working for town vehicle acquisition? Do we lease our administrative vehicles, or do we buy
Purchases.
How about we try to make some concerted effort to move toward electrical when we do our future purchase?
Well, first we got to get the first vehicles that we ordered this year. So I'm not sure if I get electric later.
They're hybrid that we ordered this
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the town is very heavily involved already in a program called Clean Energy Communities through NYSERDA. And that is an incentive program that provides points and funding potentially that isn't designated funding for different initiatives that the town takes. And the town did take the initiative of this past year to put a hybrid car to be included in its fleet, which I anticipate
It's more.
okay, is going to be coming on in a couple months. And once it does come on, it can count towards credits towards this Clean Energy Communities program, which is going to not instantly, but the town had one final high impact item to obtain before they're eligible for $5,000 towards any environmentally or green energy friendly initiative. Also, the state has come out with a new zero emission vehicles grant, both for charging stations and for vehicles, and a rebate and for new charging stations. Now, currently, there's a charging station. Yes, Jim?
Emily, on that grant for the charging station, is it just the charging station, or does it include the wiring be brought into a facility and installed?
Excellent point. So what has happened in the past year, what was being offered were 2 grants associated. Oh, wow, I'm big on that television. There were 2 grants.
We were wondering about that.
The first being what they called Made Ready. And that covered the cost from destination of electric to the actual charging station itself. And the then the second grant is called Charge New York, and that was allowing a community to get up to $4,000 worth of funding for the actual charging station, and it's actually $8,000. It's $4,000 per port, and there's 2 ports in each for each electric charging station. Now the state literally last week came out with another program that's called Zero Emission Vehicles, which is actually the name of the program 2 times ago. It's just completely different. And you have the ability to pay for both of those costs. So now they've combined it into one program. I haven't yet written one of these because it just came out and it's a new program, but they have been playing with that and the availability to assist towns with the actual wiring and the actual physical infrastructure of the electric vehicle. So if that is something the town is looking to move forward on, then we definitely want to continue having conversations with you because the funding has changed a little bit and just provides more opportunities.
I guess that's the second part of my thing is what maybe the town ought to jump out and try to get 2 of those charging stations here at the town facility.
Were we going to do that, Doug? Last year, we were putting the budget together last summer.
And
Vehicle.
there was one, so with the Charge New York, we have had these discussions with the town discussing about electric vehicles. Sorry, Doug.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to, so with the Charge New York grant, the reason we didn't have the town apply for it because the first application you put in, it starts at the timeline and you have to have the charging station up and ready in 180 days. Otherwise, you lose the money potentially, which is why this new program came out. But so we have been looking at the charging station, the town was aware of this. I had to be very careful as to when they kind of started it because then the tight timeline would have been started.
So there's a couple of steps to this whole thing, and you have to follow the steps in order, otherwise it doesn't work and you don't get the money. So like, as she mentioned, the high impact items were things that we had to do really with the first step. And that includes, like, for instance, we adopted the unifying solar permitting process. The benchmarking, we had all of our code enforcement officers do training relative to solar and clean energy. And then the last piece that we were missing was an electric hybrid vehicle that we put in the budget. Terry, that's what you're referring to. That was the car that was in the budget, that we had to take the details of the car and submit that to, what's the name of that group? NYSERDA, thank you. We had to submit that to NYSERDA to make sure that the vehicle qualified, and they said, yes, it does. So, but we don't actually receive credit until the vehicle goes in service, which Jim can tell you, it's sitting on a lot someplace waiting for a computer chip because of supply demands. So once that happens, then we can really start to get into the next step also relative to the charging stations. We've talked to NYSERDA about locations for charging stations, including in Cheshire, I know they're interested in. We've talked about the playground. We've talked about other locations. So, but they want these charging stations in an area where people are going to stay for a while. There's very specific locations that they look for as part of this. But to answer your question, Al, we're on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Emily,
It doesn't necessarily pertain to, it does. How do they work? I mean, what charging station? Now, if we have it here to charge the vehicle that we own, I understand that, but if we put one of the places you mentioned, Doug, was in Cheshire, the playground. How does that work? I mean, is it like the old parking meter? You put a coin in, you get, you know.
Kind of. That's a bit of a loaded question, but what we do is when the communities are ready, we have them work with different vendors, because different pre-identified state vendors do provide different options. So the charging stations that are getting funded have to be at a certain intellectual level and software computer level. And that software computer level actually does offer a number of variety of intellectual technology, if you will. And that is, the town could choose to provide fobs to certain people. It could provide a certain access code that if you're a town member or a town resident, you could charge for free for the first 3 months or something like that. Otherwise, it can take a credit card, or you can have it linked into, through your website. All the different vendors kind of will offer a package. I can customize it to the town and to the level of technology and service that that the town wants to provide to its residents or non-residents coming up. But once the town identifies how they want to charge, and you should charge, you should start charging right from the beginning. It's very difficult to do something for free and then start charging, even if it's 5 cents an hour, an hour charge. So you would drive up and you would charge your car, and there's actually apps on your phone where you can see if the charging station is available or when it's supposed to be available. And then you put in your code and you charge, and it will either charge your credit card, the cost of, if you choose to charge it for a certain amount of hours or up to a certain amount of cost. Now, what a town can also do is, so that someone doesn't pull their car up, say they only need an hour of charging and they park their car for 5 hours, they could say the first hour of charging is $2, but for every hour you stay there after your car is charged, you're charged $5, because you're taking up the space of someone who could be using it. So there's a variety of different things, a variety of different, schedules, if you will, to follow. And luckily, the vendors have a lot of that information and have had experience. There's a lot of these going in. So we want to kind of do the best practices and see what will work best for the town.
And there's also, it depends also, I believe, the way I understand it, because I've gone to a couple of these trainings now. It depends on where the money comes from, like the Charge America grant. I think sometimes there's parameters associated with that. So the Charge America was a settlement agreement between Volkswagen and the United States government, and they're required to install some of these charging stations. But also keep in mind the new the new inclusive playground, the new building is going to have all solar panels on the roof, and the plan is for that to basically that spins the meter backwards. That's putting energy back into the grid, and then you're getting the credit, and then potentially the charging station, if we get to that point down the road, would then go against that. So there's still a lot of details to work out.
Yeah, and we anticipate with the governor has a number of different objectives towards green energy, green infrastructure. And so, you know, I certainly can anticipate that there'll be some additional funding, you know, potentially even this year, you know, towards these different varieties of energy efficiency, and the more you do, the better. And particularly the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities grant, once the town receives that $5,000, a next round has already started, and everything you've done previously still counts towards points towards larger grants. So the town will be eligible to be applying for those as well.
I can't wait to see how big those batteries are gonna be for the 10-wheelers that Jim's got parked out back here, you know?
We'll take up the dump body.
2045, that's when everything's supposed to,
Yep.
be battery charged or powered, so.
Yeah.
Emily, any word on that grant for water meters yet?
We have not. I mean, actually, I talked to you before. You and I talked the day after I'd spoken to the gentleman from the state agency, and I haven't spoken to him since. They're just waiting on that release. And what's funny is, before I came down here, I was speaking with Gene Chrisman, and a year and a half ago, the town put in an application for a local government records management improvement fund grant, which also wasn't released, and then they held it for the last year. So the town has some potential grants to be awarded here. I would hope in the next couple months, but I don't pretend to understand Governor Cuomo or his reasonings for releases. I would think these older programs would be released before the newer programs, but there are some opportunities. There's multiple opportunities that the town is awaiting on, that they've already done the hard work of writing and submitting the grant, and now it's just waiting to find out if they've been awarded.
Hey, thanks for letting us be a guinea pig here and using your meeting as a guinea pig here today too for these for the Zoom stuff. I don't know if you can see it on your side or not, but another feature that we have in addition to the meeting room setup here is closed captioning, and there's a live transcript happening of this meeting. And so there's actually a live transcript of everything that was said today. It was recorded automatically, both it'll go on the YouTube as well as the transcript will be filed with the clerk's office. That's actually a new state law, believe it or not, that passed the legislature kind of in the last couple of months, that all of these meetings now have to have a transcript. So we were able to get that installed just this past week. So we'll have full transcripts of the meetings.
I've noticed is that by going across the bottom of the screen, that sometimes the little guy that's doing that might have a hearing problem because some of the words don't match what's being said at all.
It called
True.
you God once, Doug.
Yeah.
True. And then also, I noticed it was struggling when you guys were talking in your room sometimes because, like, I noticed when Al's talking and he's looking at Jim, it's very hard to hear as you're looking away from the microphone, extremely hard to hear. And then so, like, Greg sometimes is almost impossible to hear. So, which, that's the first time I think I've ever said that. Greg, impossible to hear.
It was filling, and it was the word filling, which was having a hard time speaking out.
You guys have just a little bit of reverb when
Yeah.
you're both unmuted. It's a lot better than it was, but you still got a little bit.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to work through some things here, but I think we'll be able to make it work.
Good. Be nice to be able to get back together physically rather than everything by Zoom.
Yes. Mhm.
Picture should be more swimming now, I think.
Yeah, that would be
That's the
helpful.
other thing, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Chuck, they say the camera has 15 pounds. You know,
I know what's
that's
going on.
on.
Jalen looks good top.
Yeah.
Put some weight on you. Not too much for us guys.
No.
I think we've come to the end. Certainly sounds that way, so.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. It's nice to have everybody back together again here. It's really neat.
Y'all have a good day. Stay safe.
Have a good weekend.
Wow, thank you.
Hold on.